Welcome back. In this video I finish off the roof and get prepared to lay the concrete. So the roof's all done now, and you can see there's the bridging pieces, which are the smaller sections, and they're there because the span is too long. And once I get those up, what I do is I go around, I torque all the bolts properly, and with so many bolts it's easy to get confused and miss something. So once they're torqued, I just put a bit of yellow paint on them, and then I know that they're done. And there's a quick look at the bridging, which is just a fairly simple C-section there. Once that was done, I came up with a basic design that was going to hold my fascias, so it's just a bit of angle line. And this is probably the first thing you'll notice where it's not like a shed. I'm trying to build something old school, and so I'm going to go with timber fascias. So I weld these on. I'll weld them on at 1 meter intervals, and then once I'm ready, I'll be able to bolt the timber fascia directly through those angles. Now once I had those fascia brackets done on both sides, the last thing I needed to do to complete the roof was to install the bracing. Now usually you'd use like a round bar, but I want to put a ceiling underneath on the inside, so I want it to be flat. So what I did is I made these brackets up, or these cleats, and I've decided to use 40 by 3 millimeter flat bar. And the idea of that is so that it's reasonably flat, and when I put a ceiling underneath it, it'll just compact up and won't get in the way. So one of the tricky things with using flat bar is tensioning it, and I come up with this, which was just putting a tie rope through it on a ratchet, and it worked a treat. So I was able to tension it right up, put the bolts in, and I had really no problem. Now some of the sections have a cross piece and some have a single piece. It's all through the engineering, but there's no way this building is going anywhere with all that bracing done. Now here's the timber fascias. So I'm going to paint these the same color as the iron I'm going to put on this workshop, but I'm going to have exposed timber, and you'll see that a bit later. So this will make a bit more sense once I finally get to install it. Now with all this done, the roof was all set, and as I've mentioned before, we're getting close to winter in Australia, and I really need to get focused on the slab and getting that done, and I'll put the roof on after the concrete is laid. Now you can see there just on the roof the exposed eaves as well, and it's all starting to come together. So we'll get onto the slab now, and we'll go over and compact the whole area for one last time. I check all the levels and move some of this road base around after driving on it with a scissor lift a fair bit. The plastic goes down. That's just to protect from having moisture go through it from the ground. And once the plastic was down, the guys put the formwork up and the expansion joints. I took a minute to enjoy just standing there watching someone else do some work for a change, so that was great. The formwork goes around the outside. It's about 1 foot wider than the workshop itself, because I just want to have a nice edge, and everything was lasered, and it's going to be, fingers crossed, very accurate and smooth. I'm using a key joint system, so I'll show you a bit more about this in a minute, but the guys put in the key joints, and then once that was done, we start cutting the mesh and put the mesh in place ready for concrete. So there's 2 layers of mesh in this slab. The first one is fairly low to the ground, and once that was in, simply cut the next lot of mesh, and that's raised up on a separate set of chairs, so it's towards the top level of the finished floor. Now this is going to be done in 2 pours, so we're just doing the mesh for the first pour only. And I just take one last chance to compact the drive entrance for the last time, just to be sure we don't have any issues when the concrete trucks finally arrive.
Well, after a heap of effort, this is now ready for the first pour. So I'll put some more rubble down because we are getting into the beginnings of winter and it has been a bit wet. So the first pour is the next step, and I have prepped everything as best I can. So you can see some markings on the ground. That's where the electrics are and piping and things. So I really don't want to have anything go through that when the mesh goes down. So the roof's all done, ready for iron, all the bracings in, all torqued up. It's really come up awesome. The mesh is down now. A few little things that are maybe different is this is going to be 180 mil thick slab, so it's about 7 inches, a little bit under 8 inches thick, which is like a commercial slab. It's got double mesh, so you can see it's 8mm rods, and one is close to the bottom. Sort of get an idea. What you normally do is you have the bottom mesh about 30mm from the bottom, and the top about 30mm from the top, so you don't actually have it in the middle. And what I'm using is called a Danley key joint system. So you can see it here. It's like a key, so concrete goes in, it separates both sides of the slab, and that key just here stops the concrete from moving up and down. And on top of that, it's also got these dowels, 20mm square solid steel every 450mm, just to be 100% sure. Now this joint down the middle here is an industrial style joint. This is called Armor-Mate. It is the Rolls-Royce of expansion joints, and you can see how substantially strong it is. So these things here are called diamond plates. There's a 10mm thick plate, goes through there and it crosses over both sides. And these are two machine plates. They're 10mm by 40mm joined together with these stub pieces. So that is going to look alright, I think. Now I put it there because that's going to be the most visible joint, and it's the most sturdy, and it provides a really sharp, solid edge, so you can drive over it with forklifts or whatever you want, and you shouldn't have any chipping. So it's not cheap, but I think it's going to be worth it. I didn't want the column flanges to be visible, so that's why I put the frame down first. It's going to be done in 2 pours because of this joint here. So you need to finish up on one side, remove this formwork that's holding it exactly in position, and then we do the second pour.
Now I'm going to use 40 megapascal concrete, which is equivalent to 5,800 psi, so it's well and truly industrial strength. Fingers crossed this goes well, and in the next video I'll show you the actual pour. See you next time.